Hey VC, this is Mark Wald with Vinyl Crush, and with a nod to the vinyl guru who threw down the gauntlet for a new vinyl challenge, 10 self-titled albums. So I threw 10 albums together across a few genres and a number of decades to try and make it interesting. If you like what you see, please give it a like, subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's jump in. First, we start in 1957 with the Vince Guaraldi Trio. So Vince Guaraldi is probably most famous for his composition and arrangements for the Charlie Brown Peanuts animation series. He's done a lot of other work. His playing is very playful and lyrical. This is with a trio. He's got a bass player, guitar player. It's great jazz. The guitar player opposes them well. They sound really good. So this is the first pressing, mono, red vinyl, fantasy label. I love showing labels because I love seeing them. Hope you like that. So that's the first one. Then we jump to 1960, and for 1960s, I have two female vocalists who just kick it. These girls are incredible. And so we'll start in 1960 with Brenda Lee. So if you look at her face, you can get an idea of maybe what her voice would sound like. She sings rockabilly, rock and roll, country pop. An incredible voice for such a little girl. And I mean that literally. She was 4'9" and 15 years old when she made this album, which is just insane. One of the hits off of this that I really like is called Sweet Nothings. Incredibly provocative song for a 15-year-old girl to be singing, but she does a great job. This is on Decca, Rainbow label, beautiful first pressing, great album. Then we jump up to 1967, and this band introduced the world to Janis Joplin. Big Brother and the Holding Company. This album came out in 67. The production on this album is just okay, but the music is really quite good. In fact, a lot of people thought that that Big Brother and the Holding Company sort of held Janis back, and she was given advice to leave the band and start to go solo, which she did after, I think, their second album. Her third album, two with them and one solo, wasn't near as good, I think, as her second album with Big Brother. I think the chemistry with this band was amazing. Very unique music, really wonderful. If you haven't heard it, recommend it. This is on Mainstream label, first pressing, great music. And we move on now to the 70s. This is 1971. This is Tessa Balin Presidente, self-titled album. This is actually the second album that they didn't have a title for. This is a kind of a rare album. It wasn't even, they're a Finnish prog rock band. And this album wasn't even released in Finland. It was only released in Sweden on Columbia EMI labels. And so it's kind of rare and hard to find in this pressing. They did release some other vinyl pressings, I think in the mid-2000s, so you can still find it. It's folk, jazz influenced prog. It's really fun stuff. Another self-titled album to check out. And still staying in 1971. This band, a friend of mine went into a record store and somebody was asking about some music, and the clerk said, "Oh, there's this band called Noi." And one of the other customers in the store said, "It's not Noi, it's Noi," because of the exclamation mark. So having said that, I'm introducing you to a band that Klaus Dinger and Mike Rother started. They were from Kraftwerk. They left Kraftwerk and formed Noi. And it's sort of German krautrock, electronic rock, experimental rock. This is my favorite krautrock album, bar none. This is an amazing album. It's really good. Bands like David Bowie, Stereolab, Sex Pistols, all said they were influenced by this band, so they had a lot of influence. Good music. This is first pressing UK on United Artists 10 label, and this album still has a shrink wrap around it. Quite a find to get this 1971 pressing in such mint condition. So then we jump to the 80s. And in 83, the 80s brought us Billy Idol. So 1982, Billy Idol was with Generation X in the UK, and they did pretty good, but he left to come to America to make it big. He was very fortunate to get together with the incredibly underrated guitar player, Steve Stevens. He's actually an incredible guitar player. You wouldn't know that just by listening to Billy's work. But together, they put this album together. Songs like White Wedding, Dancing with Myself, fun music, Wald. MTV brought them in with motorcycles and girls in black vinyl pants spanking their butts, and they made it big. So good stuff. Billy Idol's self-titled album. And that brings us to 1983 with the Violent Femmes. So the Violent Femmes were actually way ahead of their time. This album came out in 83. It wasn't until 8 years later, in 1991, that they went platinum, and their song Blister in the Sun was a big hit because of the advent of the alt-rock movement. And this music just fit in with it quite well. It's really kind of folk punk. The lead singer is unique, great delivery, interesting lyrics, lots of acoustic guitars on this, but really kind of punkish. Recommend it. Good album, first pressing. And as long as we're talking about 1991, let's talk about Temple of the Dog, another self-titled album. This is the only album called Temple of the Dog. Chris Cornell put this together for his roommate, Andrew Wood of Mother Love Bone, who died of a heroin overdose before they were able to make it big. Mother Love Bone was said to be the band that was supposed to make it big out of Seattle first. Cornell got together with Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, Mike McCready, and Eddie Vedder of soon-to-be Pearl Jammers, and put this album together. If there's anybody out there who's into alt-rock that has not heard this album, this is your lucky day. Please get it. It's amazing. So then we move into 1995. This is a self-titled album by Elliott Smith. This wasn't his first album, it was his second. The first album was called Roman Candle. Elliott Smith, really beautiful. He layers his vocals. He later on added more electric and more drums and more. He played around with his music a lot, but he was originally with a band called Heat Miser. They were really kind of a rock and roll punk. And he decided to do some acoustic stuff, so he wrote some music and performed it live, and thought he would get left off the stage, but people liked it. So he put out some records. They were well received, but he really didn't make it big until 1997, when his music was featured on Good Will Hunting. In fact, Miss Misery was nominated for Best Song, and he kind of got popular after that, kind of made it big. And then he died of suspicious circumstances in the early 2000s. This is his first pressing, Kill Rock Stars label. Kill Rock Stars, great name for a label. Then we're in the 2000s, and I'm jumping to 2015, self-titled Vietcong. Due to the politically incorrect nature of the name of this band, they weren't able to get very many bookings later on, and so they changed their name. But this is their first album. It's Canadian post-punk with dark droning tones and heavy like 80s, 90s influences, kind of psych and prog influences as well. We really like this band. They had an album that they put out later called Cassette. It was originally released on cassette, and then they re-released it on vinyl later. And that album actually is a little less dark and droning. You can hear elements of like a Bowie influence or Devo influence, 80s, 90s kind of influence in a lot of their music, especially on that album. But they had to give up the name. And so when they did that, they renamed their band and put out another self-titled album. Same members, different name, Preoccupations. Same kind of music, really fascinating, well-made. We saw them live. They did not disappoint. They played all our favorite songs. Really good stuff. And that's the last album of the self-titled series that I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, give it a like, leave a question or comment if you'd like. And thanks for hanging out. How did I do? Oh yeah, should we go ahead and throw a couple of these in?